Hey girl, so welcome into your past life reading. I did a meditation on this while I was recording, and I did a little bit of a journey as well as channeling. And yeah, we're just going to kind of jump into it. I wrote everything up, I typed it up so it's an easier time to listen to it. It makes it easier to listen to. So when I was sitting with this, I was asking to be shown the lifetime that felt most spiritually important for you. The one that kind of, I'd say, like left the deepest, imprint on your spiritual journey in general and what was coming through. So basically somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean, but a little bit further east than like main Greek islands, I was being shown ancient Caria and what's now southwestern Turkey. So, somewhere around like 120 to 90 BCE or so a very long time ago. And the land around you felt very hilly, very dry, like in the summer with dust on the roads. But there was a lot of these like olive groves and pockets of like green where water was collecting and stuff. There was a lot of goats and like very simple stones and like mud brick houses. Basically, like people mostly traveled by foot too at this time, but you didn't grow up wealthy. I didn't see that. I saw that your family was actually very well known though as well in this small community. Very respected, but ordinary, I would say. Your father worked with his hands, something with like stone or building or repairing things, something of that nature. He was very quiet. He was strong. He was practical. And spirituality for him was just kind of part of life. It was just normal. Like make offerings, doing rituals, whenever they're due, that kind of thing. And your mother knew plants really well. Really well, and household remedies and stuff. Like the kind of knowledge that women would pass down. And she wasn't flashy about it or anything like that. She really, truly loved what she did. And you were a very quiet, observant, watchful child, not shy, but always observing. And you were asking a lot of questions that I feel like sometimes made your mother a bit uncomfortable because you noticed a lot of things like patterns in dreams and like little signs, like you were showing signs of like psychic abilities, and it maybe kind of freaked her out or something. I don't know, but like she was a little bit standoffish with it. And I keep seeing this very vivid dream that was starting for you very young. And it was this one that was like, you're maybe like 7 or 8 years old, and you were walking on a road at nighttime in the dream. You had torches ahead of you. There's a woman walking ahead of you carrying what looked like a key instead of a torch. So that threw me off for a second. Hecate is associated with keys, but I was kind of hoping to see the torch to be like an aha moment, but definitely Hecate, by the way. But you would wake up from this dream and you would tell your mom, and she takes it really seriously, but she tells you to kind of just keep it to yourself, and that, I feel like her telling you that kind of shifted some things within you. You started kind of just keeping like more of what you saw private. You didn't want it to be disregarded. That didn't feel good, especially for someone very young. But as you got older, around like 14, 15-ish, you started to go more regularly to a sanctuary. It was a little bit further away from your home, but yeah. Anyway, so at first you were just kind of helping. You were carrying like water, preparing offerings, cleaning some spaces, watching the women who serve there, that sort of thing. And it was very connected to Hecate, the one who guards the crossroads and the thresholds, that epithet, okay? And to you, she felt like a powerful force, over boundaries and passages and doorways. And you already knew her. You met her in your dreams long ago. But yeah, you saw her as, you knew exactly who she was before you really knew who she was. And you were very fascinated too. Not in like a huge dramatic way, but it was pulling at you quietly. And, daily life was ordinary most of the time, helping at home, working in the fields, or, with the animals whenever needed, going to the sanctuary whenever they would call for extra hands. And you being, again, very observant, still very private about what you noticed, your gifts started showing up more. And it was showing up more and more as you spent more time there. At the sanctuary, you would start to sense whenever someone was approaching like a really big change, like a crossroads witch, basically, because that's actually a thing, just a threshold or liminal witch. But you would notice when someone was approaching big changes and transformations, not always seeing like full visions, but definitely feeling shifts, getting really strong impressions about journeys or health and things too. Like people's health and stuff. And people began to trust you with really small things at first, like especially women who were worried about births or like family matters. You're not leading anything yet, but but you were learning by watching and by being useful and staying really steady when others get emotional. You were very spiritually mature for your age, by the way, from a very young age. But yeah, so there was this major turning point in your late teens. There was a man that was really close to you, almost like family, preparing to leave on this like trading journey with some other people. And you got this very strong, like sick feeling about it. Like you had dreams of rough waters and things like being broken and stuff. And you were warning him, but he really just wasn't listening to it. Whatever. He left, right? He left anyways. And he doesn't come back. And that loss hit you really, really hard in that life. Like you kind of blamed yourself for a while, like wondering why you saw it if you couldn't stop it, and it makes you more careful about speaking, but it also deepened your understanding. And you started to realize that, sometimes you're there to witness or you're there to prepare, but it's not always like you can't always change the outcome, no matter how hard you try or how bad you want to, So yeah, and then in this next vision, I was seeing this older woman at the sanctuary, and she was taking a really large notice of you after all of that. She was very, very sharp, very experienced, maybe like 20 years older than you or so, and she becomes kind of like a teacher, a little bit hard on you, actually pretty hard on you, but very fair. And she would show you, how to prepare spaces properly, how to keep your own feelings from like clouding the work. So like emotional neutrality, how to time things right, and most importantly, she would help you really understand that standing at the doorway, it doesn't make you responsible for every choice, especially not, Tom, Dick, and Harry's choices, right? That's a choice that someone else makes. And that lesson, when she would talk to you about this, it would ease that weight off of you because you felt bad, but it would ease that weight off you that you were carrying. And then over time, your role would grow a lot more. People, especially women, again, would come to you for a lot of support around like births and marriages and grief and uncertain journeys and stuff. They fully believed you. They believed in you, and you would sit with them very calmly. You had this way of just kind of staying present without rushing anyone through their fear, which was really nice and comforting. And your daily work was kind of mixing with ordinary tasks now with this quieter kind of service, like tending to herbs, listening, offering, simple guidance, small divinations with stones and shells whenever it felt right. You never really became like famous, but that was never really on your mind anyways. It wasn't really like that, but your name traveled very quietly and quickly among those who need someone steady at the thresholds. That's for sure. You were very known. Okay. But you loved a man also for a while, but you chose not to shrink yourself to fit the life that he wanted, because he wanted you to make all kinds of changes and you were not having it. So yes, period, girl. But that decision, it did hurt, but it freed you up to go deeper into your own path. You were basically married to your path, And then as you would age into like, I guess like your 40s, 50s ish and like beyond, you would start guiding younger women. So you became a mentor yourself. You were less severe than your teacher because you remember kind of being like the scared, observing girl, and you would teach them to just listen carefully, to separate fear from true knowing, to stand at those in between places without, forcing outcomes and, all of that, which is great advice. But then your body slowed down, into your late 50s, early 60s, hands were kind of, more stiff, breathing was a bit heavier, I noticed, but your mind stayed really clear. And you knew death was coming and you were preparing things for, the women around you and all of that. And in your final days, one of the younger ones would stay really close to you and you would place a key in her hand and you would tell her simply to keep the door open. And you did pass away. You passed away peacefully with the lamplight and people nearby, your gaze towards the doorway. I could see your spirit literally leaving and I saw Hecate next to you. So it makes sense why maybe... I know you have a very close connection with Hecate, but you might feel a little bit distant right now. You've done a lot of work with her in general. And you have that ability now to stand present at someone's edge. You have the ability to do all of these things again in this life if you let yourself really roll into it. And the discernment, that you have in this life, you can carry with you too, to know when to speak and when to witness, that sort of thing. And like, you really learn that intuition doesn't always mean control. And that is something to take with you. Real devotion also just, a lot of times looks like quiet consistency. It's not this like constant kind of sign of some sort, And in the end, I see you as a young girl again on that night road. But this time, the woman with the key was turning around and her face was your face. Like, you weren't just following, you became the one who could hold the thresholds, which is really cool. You can do a lot of threshold work in this current life now, right? Because of this. Now, some archetypes and some soul lessons from this lifetime that I was digging into. And I'm sitting with the energy of the life we're just talking about, not a different one, okay? So what was coming forward was the strongest archetype. What was coming forward was the threshold guardian. And this is the person, the one who stands at the edges where things change, okay? Not the like flashy oracle or like the high priestess in the center of everything, but the steady presence right at the doorway. And like basically this archetype is like you being the person that others can seek out whenever they're about to cross, okay? Like when they're going to die, or when there's a birth or a loss or big decisions, endings that become beginnings, that sort of thing. And in that life, it showed up through the sanctuary work, sitting with the dying, guiding women through transitions. It feels very natural to you even now, I would say, is what I'm picking up on. And there is also this very kind of quiet archetype layered in, which is, I call it the quiet witness. This is the observant one who's going to see more than she speaks, who's going to hold space without needing to, fix or perform. That watchful child who learned early to just kind of keep certain things private until they were ready, matured into someone that people could trust because you didn't rush their process. You didn't turn away from the hard parts either. You were never afraid of that. But the main soul lesson that was coming through from this lifetime was pretty direct. One of them is discernment, okay, between fear and true knowing, right? And then, because like after losing that man, you did try to warn, they passed away and all of that. You had to learn that a strong feeling isn't always a command to intervene, which is not easy. That's easier said than done, And sometimes it's just like old memories. It's anxiety, wearing sacred clothes, like you worked really hard to separate the two, and that clarity made your gifts cleaner. And I feel like that's still very active for you, the work of trusting the steady signal underneath the noise. Very much. Another big one is presence without control, because you learn that basically like standing at the threshold with someone doesn't make their choice yours to carry, right? Love, guidance, intuition, none of that gives you ownership over someone else's path. And you knew that. And that lesson freed you from a lot of guilt and heaviness in that life. And it felt like it was basically asking to be remembered now and to be taken, like put into your pocket and taken with you, And then this last little piece that came through strongly was devotion as consistency. It's not this like big dramatic spiritual experience all the time, but like just showing up, keeping the space clean, doing the quiet work, even whenever no one is watching. That's what matters, And in the later years of your life, your connection to the sacred, and especially Hecate, became less about calling on signs, and it was just more about simply living it, keeping the lamp lit, holding the door open for the next person. And that really feels like something that your soul is inviting you back to, depth that doesn't need constant proof, But yeah, girl, this lifetime is screaming that you are built for the in-between places. You help people see where they stand and then let them choose. And that's where your real power sits. It's not in preventing, every single hard crossing, because it's not possible, but it's in making sure that no one has to face it completely alone. And that can also be looked at in a way of psychopomp work too, helping people cross over to the next phase and things of that nature. It's a very quiet kind of strength, but it runs really, really deeply. So, girl, yeah, you're definitely cut out for underworld magic, working with Hades, working with Hecate. I hope that you enjoyed this past life reading. I do have a message for you. I'm going to send it along with this. I'm going to type it out though, so that you can keep it. I do want to say, I saw a couple of little flashes that were coming in. If you're ever interested in looking into other lives, let me know. But I did see one life that was in ancient Egypt, but I wasn't really sure if that was one that you'd want to hear about, because you don't work, as far as I understand, you don't work with any Egyptian gods or goddesses. But yeah, I mean, if you're interested in hearing about it, let me know. If you want to purchase another past life reading, we can. But just a little glimpse that I saw was you working with Sekhmet. Um, it wasn't like, it's not that you were like a priestess or anything like that, but I did see you doing like temple work and stuff like that with Sekhmet. And that had to do with like learning how to heal others and also how to protect yourself. There was some sort of like falling out in that life. Like it felt like there was some sort of battle that happened. It was kind of dramatic. It felt like a big clash basically. But for some reason, this life just pulled me more. And I feel like it was because Hecate wanted you to know basically like, hey, we've been connected for a very, very, very long time. And if you ever feel like, you're drifting away from me, or, you feel bad because you're putting more time in here and not giving me enough time, I feel like she really wants you to be aware that, like, look at all the time that you've had. You've had many past lives with her, many past lives working with her. This is just one of them. This is your oldest past life, though, by the way. This is old. Girl, you're an old soul. But I think she wants you to, like, allow yourself to explore and, just know that she's always a quiet presence there with you. And it's kind of like the way I look at Nyx. No matter what, I could literally not pray to Nyx for a year and she'd still be there. Not that I would do that, but like, I'm just saying, like, you could, So hopefully that gives you some comfort, but very, very cool. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.